Hey everybody, today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Squarespace. Have you ever tried to create and build your own website? It's unbelievably difficult. I mean, even if you know how to code a little bit, or maybe you're good at Photoshop, you have a sense of design, it's still incredibly difficult to do it all by yourself, to make everything look great and function properly. It's a huge time-consuming affair. But there's good news. You don't have to do it alone, because Squarespace offers the simplest way for anyone, regardless of skill level, to create a beautiful, professionally designed looking website, landing page, or online store with beautiful award-winning designer templates, intuitive, easy to use tools, and zero coding required. Plus you'll get award-winning 24/7 customer service and a free domain if you sign up for a year. So start your free trial site today at squarespace.com. And when you do decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use our special offer code, RichRoll, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. So that's awesome. Support Squarespace, get an awesome site, support the podcast. It's all gravy. All right, let's do the show.
I just really feel strongly that I want to race, but I'm not going to sell my soul so that I can race. It's not that important to me, whereas the causes to me, these are the most important challenges that the human race has ever faced. I mean, we're living through the 6th mass extinction of species. We're killing off plants and animals at a rate that's like 1,000 times faster than the normal natural background rate. Ocean acidification, climate change, all of these things. This is too big to ignore. I mean, all of us have to try and become part of the solution, and that includes NASCAR fans and, fans of every sport. We can't just be talking to our friends. They're harder conversations to have, right? It's hard to sit and talk to somebody who coming to the table is on the other side of you and doesn't agree with what you're saying, but that's how you eventually change people.
That's Leilani Munter this week on the Rich Roll Podcast. The Rich Roll Podcast. Hey everybody, how you guys doing? What's happening? My name is Rich Roll. I am your host. Welcome to my podcast, the show where each week I delve deep with some of the most inspiring and compelling thought leaders I can find across all categories of health, fitness, athletic performance, medicine, entrepreneurship, spirituality, creativity. You get the idea. Really appreciate you guys tuning in today, for subscribing, for sharing the show with your friends, for leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, for supporting my work via Patreon. Really happy and grateful, mostly grateful to have your attention here today. Got a super interesting show for you. Today I sit down with the super cool professional race car driver, passionate vegan, and environmental activist, Leilani Munter. So who is this person? Leilani has been racing in the ARCA series, which is a development league of NASCAR. Leilani is the 4th woman in history to race in the Indy Pro Series, which is the development league of IndyCar. She set the record for the highest finish for a female driver in the history of the Texas Motor Speedway when she finished 4th in 2006. And Sports Illustrated named her one of the top 10 female race car drivers in the world. But what's really interesting about Leilani, beyond the inherently intriguing appeal of being one of only a few female NASCAR drivers, is that for her, racing or winning or performance really take a backseat to using her profile, and specifically her car, her race car, as a means to spread the things that she's passionate about, environmental awareness. And she really puts her money where her mouth is. She was one of the first activists to arrive at the 2010 Gulf oil disaster. She's been to Taiji, Japan 3 times to document the dolphin slaughter depicted in the Academy Award-winning documentary The Cove. She has spoken at the UN in Geneva in 2015 on numerous occasions. She has appeared on Capitol Hill to speak on behalf of clean energy legislation. And since 2007, for every race she runs, she adopts 1 acre of rainforest. So that's pretty cool. She sits on the board of the Oceanic Preservation Society and on the advisory board of the Solutions Project, which is a nonprofit dedicated to accelerating the transition to 100% renewable energy. Her accomplishments have been profiled in USA Today, Italian Vogue, the New York Times, Washington Post, Reader's Digest, Esquire, Newsweek. You get the idea. Many, many more. Discovery's Planet Green named her the #1 eco athlete in the world, and she is a recipient of Elle Magazine's 2012 Genius Award And also, Glamour magazine named her an Eco Hero. Many of you might know Leilani from the 2015 documentary Racing Extinction. That was made by the filmmakers behind The Cove, which won the Academy Award. Leilani appears in that film, Racing Extinction. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. And if all of that isn't enough for you, Leilani's brother-in-law is Grateful Dead guitarist and singer Bob Weir. So that in and of itself is kind of amazing. Got a few more notable things I want to say about Leilani and this podcast, the episode coming up. But first, today's podcast is also brought to you by my friends at 22 Days Nutrition. If you listen to my most recent episode, that was number 300, then you know that Julie and I were recently in Miami with our good friend Marco Borges. He is the founder and the CEO of 22 Days Nutrition. Even though he's only on that podcast for a couple minutes introducing Julie and I at our book event launch for This Cheese is Nuts, I think you get a pretty good sense of this guy's character, of what he's all about. I've said it before, but it's worth repeating. He is really one of the most genuine, most enthusiastic people I've ever met. He's got a huge heart, and he really has devoted his life to helping people in a really fundamental, substantial way. He's just an extraordinary example of service and giving and positive energy. He's also been on this podcast 2 other times, episode 195 and 271. And if you're a longtime listener, then you know this guy well. Anyway, he's the guy behind 22 Days Nutrition, which is a multifaceted plant-based brand dedicated to helping people overcome bad eating habits and achieve their goals, whether they're health or weight loss or fitness, with lasting solutions. Because the sort of motto behind this company is that they believe a healthier diet, lifestyle, and the planet are all interconnected. So you have to address everything from the whole. And that's what Marco and 22 Days is all about. And that's why I'm excited to have them as a sponsor of this show, because I really believe in the company and Marco and their mission. Again, Marco, this guy is insane about quality. People ask me all the time, what supplement brand should I get? What kind of protein powder should I get? What kind of bars do you like to eat? And I always say 22 Days, not just because Marco is my friend, but because it really is the best stuff. It's the best stuff out there. All their nutritional products, everything that they make, the bars, the protein powders, the meal delivery service, are 100% plant-based. They are 100% USDA certified organic. They are GMO free. They are gluten free. They are soy free. I mean, let's just pause on this for a minute. That's unbelievably rare. You cannot find very many brands that are certified organic and plant-based and GMO free. It's just really a testament to the quality level that and the sensibility that Marco brings to his brand. Essentially, it's plant-based nutrition made personal with all the tools you need to adopt plant-based living habits. Their belief is that everybody is capable of changing themselves and the world 22 days at a time, hence the name of the company. Because the more plant-based meals people choose to eat, the better life is for themselves, their family, and the planet. So whether you're just looking for a healthy snack, maybe you want a pre or post-workout aid, you're curious about the plant-based lifestyle, or maybe you're just totally lost, you're interested, but you need much more guidance, and you can get all your meals delivered by these guys. They've got you completely covered. Essentially, 22 Days is a delicious and complete plant-based nutrition platform for your life. You can find all their products at Target stores nationwide and on their website. So go to 22 Days Nutrition, that's 22, the number 22, 22daysnutrition.com/roll. And here's the deal. To get 10% off all their products, including the meal delivery and free shipping, here's what you do. You go to 22daysnutrition.com/richroll and you use the promo code richroll at checkout. Again, 22daysnutrition.com/richroll, promo code richroll. This stuff is great. You're going to love it. All right. Today's show. You know who else is great? Leilani is great. She's just a super strong, powerful female role model, and so much more than meets the eye, so much more than just a race car driver. So in this conversation, we of course discuss her upbringing, what motivated her, what led her to become a race car driver, what it's like to be a female race car driver in a male-dominated sport, essentially what it means to kind of buck the NASCAR stereotype. We talk about how she incorporates her vegan lifestyle and her environmental activism into the NASCAR subculture. But mostly, this is a discussion about her why, which, again, is less about performance. It's less about winning races and much more, if not almost entirely about her activism, essentially, or specifically, I should say, environmental preservation. As Leilani is fond of saying, never underestimate a vegan hippie chick with a race car. And after listening to this conversation, I'm sure you will agree. So let's talk to her. Never underestimate a vegan hippie chick in a race car. That's the tagline, right?
That's it.
Where did you come up with that?
I think, I've used it for ages. I've probably used that line as a vegetarian before, because I went vegan almost 6 years ago now. So it used to be never underestimate a vegetarian hippie chick with a race car. And then 5.5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, I went vegan, and so I changed it. And I think, people are I'm kind of an oddball in the racing world, right? Like, I'm very liberal. I come from a science background. I'm vegan. I'm fighting for things that other people in the racing world are not. So I
think that's an understatement. You are definitely confusing in the world in which you habitate, right? I mean, it's super interesting and everything that has happened since, that was like 2011 when you went vegan, right? So many things have happened in your life since then. I mean, it's crazy how not just the vegan movement has exploded, but the kind of awareness around the activism that you've done because of the world in which you live has sent ripple effects out in a really powerful way. It's been really cool to kind of watch this happen from afar, and I'm surprised that we've never actually met in person, so I'm really glad to be sitting down with you today.
Yeah, it's really great to be here.
It's cool. So probably the most recent big thing that occurred was you racing Daytona in the vegan powered car, right?
Absolutely.
That was in February.
That was in February. I'd been working on the vegan car for years. I mean, really right after I went vegan. And even when I was vegetarian, I was trying to talk to, the meat substitutes, the vegan cheeses, those kinds of companies.
They don't have the marketing budget for a NASCAR advertisement buy, do they?
Well, some of them do. Now some of them do.
And what does it usually cost to get those stickers on those? I mean, every inch of those cars is covered.
Yeah, so for me to run the big tracks like Daytona, and I'm actually coming back in the vegan-powered car at Talladega on May 5th.
Oh, that's exciting.
Those bigger races are about $100,000 for the race car, to run the race car. And then on top of that, we didn't just do the race car. I felt like it was a really important part, and sort of the goal of the campaign was to get vegan food into the race fans' mouths. And so we didn't just do the race car, so we about doubled the cost to $200,000 because we had a tent with vegan food. I had Jason Stefanko from Gardein, the chef from Gardein, out there. He was cooking vegan food, and we were giving away free samples to the fans.
You had like Robert Cheek and David Carter were there too.
Yes.
You invited me. Thank you for inviting me. I couldn't make it out there. I wish I could have gone. It must have been so cool.
It was so cool. Maybe you could come to Talladega.
I'll look into it.
It's on Friday, May 5th. And, the reaction from the race fans was amazing. We obviously brought the kind of food that you would normally find at the racetrack. So we had like vegan chicken wings, vegan tenders that were, being dipped in Follow Your Heart ranch dressing. And we had vegan meatballs. And I mean, just over and over all day long, all I heard was, I can't believe this is vegan. How do they do that? And then the second question that they would ask is, where can I buy this? Right. And so it was really great to be able to tell them, Walmart, Target, you can find this anywhere. Any grocery store carries this stuff. So that's for it to be so accessible to them. And I think one of the things that really resonated, I am vegan for animal rights and environmental reasons. I'm definitely not like, I'm not a junk food person, but I definitely eat like vegan macaroni and cheese.
You like the McNuggets and the...
I do, yeah. So I'm not like a super, super healthy vegan. I'm sure I do kale and quinoa and things like that too. But I definitely like the, the vegan sort of junk food. And so I don't really talk a ton about the health side of it just because that wasn't the thing that that had reached me. It was for the animals and for the planet. But when we were with the race fans, we just, a lot of people are trying to lose weight and they're unhealthy and they're at risk of diabetes and heart disease and all of these problems, that a plant-based diet can be a really big part of the solution. So when we were handing, we had thousands of fans there, but when we were handing them the sample, I would say, half the calories, half the fat, all the protein, 0 cholesterol. And I was seeing, husbands and wives looking at each other and, families telling me, oh, we have a lot of diabetes in our family, or we have heart disease and he's already had a heart attack. And I think the health message actually really, really resonated with the fans, especially at the track where, you're eating junk food. It's like pizza and
big
French fries.
Yeah, of course, right? So did you had like a tent set up in the middle of the track, like in that, what do you call it, the infield? Like,
it wasn't in the infield. It was actually outside, which is even better because you got everybody as they were going in. So it's right at the entrance to the racetrack. So there's all kinds of tents set up, and we had a duplicate of my vegan-powered race car. So that brings a lot of people in, and, little kids could get into my race car and take pictures of them behind the wheel. We just gave away so many samples, and I never heard a negative reaction. There wasn't a single person that took a bite and didn't like it. Everybody was surprised and shocked. And it was really fun because I was talking to guys that were like wearing camouflage and, are hunters and NASCAR fans, and they're standing there looking at me saying, this is amazing vegan food. Like, where can I buy this? And I think that's really powerful, right? If you want to change something, you have to get outside of the box and talk to people that don't agree with you and are not on board. If you're a vegan company or a vegan activist and you're just going around to conferences with other vegans, or, in my environmental world, a lot of time environmentalists.
The echo chamber. I mean, that's one of the things about what's so powerful about what you do, because it's so outside the box of the typical, vegan, animal rights, environmentally conscious, person that you're going to meet walking down the street in Venice or in Tribeca. You know what I mean? Like, This is middle America. These are average, everyday people. This is most of the people in the United States. I mean, we're talking about the second largest sport in America, right? Like, how many people watch NASCAR? It's like a $45 billion industry.
Yeah, millions and millions of people watch. And that's the same reason that I'm bringing the environmental message there too, is because I go to all of these clean energy events and, documentaries that are raising awareness about this stuff. But if I want to change something and I want the race fans to see it, I can't expect them to show up at a clean energy conference or like, some environmental film festival. That's not,
meet them
that's
where
not
they're
what
at.
they're interested in.
And they're at NASCAR.
Right. So with both the Cove and Blackfish, what we did was I did crowdfunding and raised the funds to get the Cove car on the track at Daytona, and then the Blackfish car was at Talladega.
That was Sam Simon, right? That backed that?
Almost all of it. So we tried to do crowdfunding, and I had raised a little bit, like $7,500 or something, and then Sam swooped in and sort of saved the day and covered the rest of the cost. And we brought DVDs, and we gave away DVDs of the Cove and Blackfish to the fans. So when you do the autograph signings, and they normally just get a picture of the driver with the car, and it's a little promo thing for them to take home, we were also handing them a DVD of the film. And so there was this sort of similar concept with the vegan car, was to, put the vegan food in their mouths and kind of just change their mind with them being able to taste it. Because I honestly think a lot of people that aren't vegan hear the word vegan and they immediately think that I live off of salad and quinoa and kale and carrots, and it's all super healthy and I'm not going to like it, and it's not what I grew up eating. It's not the comfort foods that I love. And I'm standing there just saying, no, you can have vegan macaroni and cheese and vegan ice cream and everything that you can possibly crave. There is a vegan version of it. I just had I was in Tokyo and I had a vegan cheese fondue at a restaurant. So anything that you want is now out there. So if you can have all the flavors and you can have all the taste, you're not giving up or sacrificing anything. And it's, with all the benefits that we know for the planet, for the animals, for your own health, it just doesn't make any sense. There are no excuses left to not eat plant-based, especially here in LA where you guys have so many amazing
You're
vegan
preaching to my
restaurants.
echo chamber right now. Like I'm with you, but I'm imagining, the guy that shows up in NASCAR in his camouflage or whatever, and he's grumbling under his breath, like, what is she doing here? Who does she think she is? Like, I'm sure you're on the receiving end of quite a bit of that.
It happens online really more than in person. I mean, maybe there were those people there at Daytona, but they didn't come to the tent or give me a hard time. Everybody that stopped was just so impressed with the food. And I knew that would be the case. I knew that what had to happen was they just have to try the food. And once they can see, oh my gosh, I can eat like chicken wings and there's no animals in this and this is healthier for me, that we were going to change so many minds. And I've seen a bunch of race fans commenting on, my social media on Facebook and Twitter and just telling me like, I was at your tent at Daytona and I've been buying the vegan, meats now. And it's amazing.
It's great. Landon Castle tells me the same, Landon, right?
Yes, I do.
So he's a friend. He's been on the podcast, but he said that people come up to him all the time. Like sometimes when other people aren't looking, but they're like, hey, tell me how you do this. And like, how can I do this myself? And, his experience in NASCAR with that kind of one-on-one interaction with the fans and the people that kind of orbit that world is very different than what you would imagine sort of stereotypically would come to mind.
For certain. I mean, I think there's a lot of stereotyping of NASCAR fans, and people think, and the same thing happens with the environment. They think, because they like fast cars, they don't care about clean air and clean water, and that's just not true. And it's really just about opening people's eyes and reaching out to them and trying to have the conversation. If you're going to try and change the world, you can't run around and preach to the choir. And I have found, and I think I'm one of the people that really walks this line of where I'm kind of in between these two worlds. Half my life is in, the environmental world and the vegan world and the activist world. And then I also have this racing life. And I see that there's a lot more crossover than people give them credit for.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you're sort of describing that as two different worlds, but those worlds bleed together more than they do for any other driver that I know. I don't know of any other driver that brings their point of view or their whatever they're into, like whatever they're interested in, into the racing world to the extent that you do. For me, from my perspective, as a very much an outsider who knows very little about NASCAR and racing in general, it would appear to me that these are one and the same for you.
They are. I mean, I know from the outside, people hear, environmental activist and race car driver, and they think, how can those two possibly go together? But for me, they're endlessly intertwined, and one really doesn't exist without the other. Because I made a conscious choice many years ago that I didn't want to race unless I was promoting something that I believed in, so my cars have carried, like I said, those documentaries, and I've had solar and wind on my car, clean energy stuff promoting, legislative changes to help us get to 100% renewable energy, the vegan car. They're all things that I really fight for when I'm away from the racetrack and not behind the wheel. And so it's a much deeper thing to me. It's not just like a logo on a car. And many of the drivers, I'd say most of the drivers that I race with, they just want to race cars. Mm-hmm. That is their 100% their main passion. Whereas for me, racing is a passion. I love to race. But I find more satisfaction and more reward in being an activist. And so to be able to use the race car as sort of a billboard for the activism is, for me, I just look at it as an incredible opportunity that I have this 200-mile-an-hour billboard that can reach all of these people that normally, I think the environmental world and the vegan world can struggle to reach them because, they're hanging out at the racetrack. You're not seeing a ton of vegan food. You're not seeing a lot of environmental messages. So, like we power my race car, my pit box is powered by solar. We've got a portable solar thing that we bring
is
along
anybody
all the
else
races.
You started that in like 2014, right?
Yeah.
So the whole pit crew is solar powered.
Yeah.
And I saw an interview with one of your pit guys, and he's like, it's awesome because it doesn't make any of the noise that the other pit crews make, so you can actually focus on what you're doing. And he was basically asserting that it was more productive for him to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there were competitive advantages that I think they didn't expect. I was doing it obviously because I didn't want to burn any fuel. If I could use everything off of solar, why wouldn't we do that? But there were definitely teams coming over and asking us about it, and it wasn't because they wanted to like go green or reduce their carbon footprint. It was because it would be a competitive advantage in the pits to not have to yell over this loud diesel generator when you're trying to talk to each other. So those are, it's just about going out and doing it. Like I also drive my Tesla to and from all the races. And, oftentimes I'll tell fans like what Tesla superchargers I'll be at so they can come and see the car. And it's, by doing that, I'm sort of dispelling, I think, the biggest myth that people have about electric cars, which is that they can't go on long road trips when that's just not true. There's so many superchargers out there. You can easily do road trips. I've driven all the way from New York to San Francisco with no problem finding charging. So just by doing it and showing up and being at the track and having the electric car, I mean, just those little things of seeing it, that's planting a little seed in their head that, maybe my next car will be electric, or maybe I'll look into putting solar panels on my house, or, maybe instead of buying meat, I'm going to try that vegan stuff. I think it's just all about leading by example. And that's what I'm trying to do in racing. And I understand why a lot of the other drivers, I think there's a lot of drivers that care about the issues I care about, but they don't know if their next ride is going to be, in the Pennzoil car or the Exxon
or the Doritos car or the Shell car. Yeah.
Right. So they can't really show up with me at the BP oil spill or go to DC and lobby against oil because that could lose them a potential racing job. Whereas for me, I don't care if it loses me that racing job because I would rather not race than race a car promoting things that I don't care about. So
your priorities are different, but you make it you make it doubly hard on yourself. Like not only are you one of the few females like trying to put a stamp into this world, you're in a position where you're going to have to say no to most of the sponsors that are knocking on your door, which means you may not get your car funded. And you're not going to be able to race as much. So your ability to sort of make a living and really progress up the ranks of the sport is severely truncated as a result.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I hadn't been in a car for 2 years. When I raced at Daytona in the vegan car, and we did so well. We were all the way up in 4th place in that race, and I was running 6th when another car took me out with 15 laps to go. But I just really feel strongly that like I want to race, but I'm not gonna sell my soul so that I can race. It's not that important to me. Whereas the causes to me, these are the most important challenges that the human race has ever faced. I mean, we're living through the 6th mass extinction of species. We're killing off animals, plants and animals at a rate that's like 1,000 times faster than the normal natural background rate. Just ocean acidification, climate change, all of these things. This is too big to ignore. I mean, all of us have to try and become part of the solution. And that includes NASCAR fans and, fans of every sport. We can't just be, we can't just be talking to our friends. We have to go out there and have those they're harder conversations to have, right? It's hard to sit and talk to somebody who coming to the table is on the other side of you and doesn't agree with what you're saying, but that's how you eventually change people.
I think it's hard for most people to even break out of thinking, they're having their thinking orient solely around what's in their best sort of immediate self-interest, in general, right? So basically, you're asking people to think more broadly about the choices that they make, which is new for a lot of people and perhaps, slightly uncomfortable. And for you, as somebody who's had an eye on like maintaining your integrity in that world by not, taking sponsor dollars from companies that would, sort of undermine, the integrity of the message that you're putting out there, and thus not being able to race as often. Despite that, you still take some gruff from people who say, well, it's hypocritical for you to even be a race car driver. How can you be an environmentalist when you're on this track and you're burning all this oil and you're in this sport that, built into the very fabric of which is the, overconsumption of fossil fuels. So how do you kind of, retort to that?
Right. So, I mean, the sport of auto racing began when the second car got built. I mean, this is something that's
probably something people in auto racing say all the time, right? But I've never heard that before. I like that.
I mean, it's never going to go away. Mm-hmm. People are always going to want to race cars. And certainly, I've been working with and talking with the people over at Electric GT. It's possible that I'll be racing a Tesla next year.
Yeah, they're creating a whole series around this, right?
Right, yeah. It's a modified, highly modified version of a P100D Model S. So it's got like 1,100 pounds ripped out of it, and it'll be the fastest GT car in the world. But that series is still being, built right now. So it hasn't actually started yet. Mm-hmm. But with regards to the, so I burned like 30 gallons of gasoline at Daytona. And that's all I've burned in the last...
Is that all you burn when you race something like Daytona?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 22-gallon fuel tank. I'm not running in the 500, so my race is only 200 miles round, so it's like 80 laps. And we can go most of the race on that 22. You do one pit stop for refueling to get some fuel. But yeah, it's probably around 30, maybe a little over 30 gallons of gas. In response, like I also haven't bought gasoline for my personal car since September 2013 because I've been driving my electric car and I've got solar panels on my roof. So I'm actually producing more solar every month than I use to run my whole house and to charge up the Tesla. So I'm actually, giving solar away essentially to my neighbors. But yeah, there's nothing I can do about the fuel, that's burnt in the race car. I have to use the same fuel as everybody else. But, so to sort of address that, in 2007, I started adopting an acre of rainforest for every race that I run to sort of offset that carbon footprint. But if I didn't burn that 30 gallons, like if it wasn't me in that vegan-powered race car at Daytona, I wouldn't take a race car off the grid. There'd just be another driver in that car with a different sponsor. There's always going to be a full field of race cars on the track. So it's not like if I quit racing and was like, okay, I'm just going to ride a bike instead now because I don't want to, ever burn 30 gallons again. First of all, I'm like losing my reach of millions of people. Over 1 million people were watching that Daytona race. You can go speak at the Veg Fest and preach to the echo chamber, or you can be on NBC Sports and have millions of people, see your car spin around that track however many times and potentially make an impact on people who are brand new to these ideas. Yeah, Daytona, I mean, we got incredible television coverage at Daytona, and then commentators on TV, the NASCAR commentators even said, or the ARCA commentators even said, I tried some of that food down there and it was pretty good. That vegan food was pretty good.
They weren't like cracking jokes at your expense?
No, they were totally praising it. It was really awesome. My whole race team went vegan for that race weekend. Wow. So all we cooked was vegan food. It was very funny because the first day, Kathy Venturini, who was doing the cooking, she's the wife of Bill Venturini. He sort of started Venturini Motorsports, which is the team that I race for. So she told everybody, everybody knew, okay, we're going vegan for a race day. It's Leilani's birthday. And I sort of looked at it as like a birthday gift to me that the whole team was going vegan. And so one of the crew guys, I guess, walked into the hauler and was eating some of the vegan chicken wings and looked at her and he's like, all right, where's this vegan food? And And she kind of
It's in
pointed
your
at his
hand.
hand, and she was like, yeah, you're already eating the vegan food. And he was like, nuh-uh, this is chicken. And she's like, no, it's not. That's plant protein.
That's crazy.
And he couldn't even tell. So there's been a lot of really positive reaction. And when I was putting my racing seat in, there's kind of a funny moment. I was getting my racing seat fitted in the car, and I'm kind of small. I'm 5'3", and so to fit properly in the car, you know, we have to have my seat correct. It's very difficult to get the seat correct. And that's your office, you know, you're spending hours in there, so you want to make sure you're comfortable. So we're fitting my seat, and we were late at the race shop. Most people had gone home, but there were 6 of us in the race shop. And of the 6 of us, it was just crew members working on the race cars, and then Bill Venturini, who started the race team. And one of the guys working on my car was vegan, and another guy working on the car was vegetarian.
Just independent of you.
The first guy that's vegan was independent of me. The other guy went vegetarian after I showed him all these, you know, different documentaries, and he became more aware. And he's super into it, and he posts pictures of all his vegan meals and stuff. But then I was kind of looking around. I was like, he's vegetarian, he's vegan, I'm vegan. That means that 50% of the people that are inside Venturini Motorsports right now are vegan. And so I went over to Bill, and their hat for the race team is just a big V standing for Venturini, which is their last name. And I was like, you know what? Half the people in your race shop are either vegetarian or vegan right now. I think that V might actually also could stand for vegan. And he was laughing, but they've all really started to substitute, you know, when they get ground beef, now they're getting the vegan ground beef. And when I go to the race shop, you know, sometimes I'll bring like a vegan pizza, or I'll stick some vegan ice cream in the fridge. And I just, you know, I'm not trying to be super forceful, but I'm nudging people.
Yeah, I get it. No, but you're as out there and as outspoken as anybody on all of these issues. Like, you don't pull punches. You're not afraid to get controversial and mix things up. And we're going to get into all that kind of stuff. So it's not like you're a sheepish, you know, advocate for these ideas that are so important to you.
Yeah, I guess when you're putting it on the hood of your race car, it's not very subtle.
You're not hiding, you know? Yeah, it's like I would say a Trojan horse, but that implies that you're kind of hiding. You know, it's like you're not hiding at all. You're just blazing, you know, full guns into a world that is traditionally, you know, not receptive to these kinds of ideas. So there's a boldness to that I appreciate. I mean, what is the, you know, we know the sort of stereotype of the typical NASCAR fan, or, you know, I've never been to a NASCAR race, or kind of what that world is all about. But, you know, what is the reality that you see, like in your experience of doing this for however long you've been doing this for, like 15, 16 years, right?
Yeah. So the activism, when I actively started to use my voice to talk about like the environment and really bring causes into it, was around 2006. In the beginning of my career as a woman, like, I was just trying to be accepted. I wanted so badly to, you know, be embraced by the racing community, right.
And that's enough.
At some point I kind of just realized, you know what, I'm never going to fit in. Like, why am I trying to get them to accept me? Like, I'm never going to fit in. Like, when you're the only girl, or one of the very few girls.
How many are there?
Well, there's Danica Patrick, who's on the top level of NASCAR. I don't think there's any women in NASCAR Xfinity series. That's the series that you race. So maybe no, I'm in ARCA. So I'm one level. I'm what you would race before you go to Xfinity. I think there's one girl that races in NASCAR Craftsman trucks, but yeah. So I mean, at my race at Daytona, I was the only girl in the ARCA race, and Danica was, I think, she was the only girl, obviously, in the Cup Series, and I'm not sure if there was a girl in the NASCAR truck series. I think there might be a girl running in that still. So we're definitely like the odd ones out. So
and do you guys like hang and like talk?
Well, we're all in different series, so you're not even like
really. Yeah, because you have this idea you get together and have like girls' night and like complain about. Like...
I know Danica, and we have a friendly relationship. We've been on campaigns together in the past, and so we have a good relationship. But like, yeah, I don't see her all the time or anything like that. It's if we saw each other at the track, we definitely say hello, and I'm always pulling for other girls to do well because there are so few of us. But yeah, at some point I realized, I think 2006 is when An Inconvenient Truth came out. And my degree is in biology, specializing in ecology, behavior, and evolution. So I was already very environmental long ago. But that movie coming out was when I really felt like, it's not enough for me to just talk to my friends about this and my family. I should use like racing to start talking about this. So that's when I started, an area on my website that was actively reaching out to the race fans. And the response was really bad at first. People were angry.
Don't bring your politics into the racetrack.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember seeing tons of traffic coming to my website from a NASCAR forum, and I was like, what is going on? And I went to look, and it was a thread that was essentially calling me all kinds of names, throwing me under the bus because I had said something about An Inconvenient Truth as a movie that everybody should see, and they were just trashing me, and this driver's an idiot, and she's brainwashed by Al Gore, and global warming is a farce, and all this ridiculous arguments. But then, so by the time I found it, the thread was many pages long. So then one of the people on the forum said, well, have you actually seen the movie that she's talking about? Because it's a little weird if you're so mad at this girl for promoting this movie if you haven't even actually watched it. Have you watched it? And then the discussion sort of left trashing me, and then it became a discussion about Al Gore and the film. And then by the time I got to the end of the thread, people were posting graphs of the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And this was on a NASCAR forum where normally people are only talking about racing and what happened in the race and what driver did what. And that was sort of like a moment where the hair on the back of my neck kind of stood up, and I immediately was totally over all of the insults that they had flung at me.
Yeah, you won. You stimulated conversation in a realm in which that would have never happened ordinarily.
Right. It
transcended your personality. Your personality was the catalyst. You sort of lit the spark, but then it became about the issue.
That then became like my number one focus, was like, okay, I'm just gonna get them to start talking about this stuff, because I guarantee you people that were arguing on that thread, I guarantee you some of them then went and watched the movie because they were having such a big fight about it. So it was negative back then, but that's 2006. I mean, that was really in the very beginning of people learning about climate change, especially the mainstream. But now it's really positive. I mean, in 2010, I ran a clean energy car. That the goal of the car was to raise awareness about changing legislation. And it was a partnership with all these veterans that were fighting for clean energy on Capitol Hill. Mm-hmm. And we had a big tent display like we did with the vegan car. And we were, talking to people about clean energy. And we had 30,000 people come through our tent and give us their emails and say, I want to be kept up to date about these clean energy issues in Washington, D.C. And that was, over the course of the race weekend, it was 30,000, emails we had gotten. And, there's probably 100,000 people at the racetrack. So we got almost a third of the people that were there. And that was 2010. So now, fast forward, I've had the Blackfish car, I've had the Cove car. Lots of people, when they saw the Cove, I don't think there's anybody that can watch the Cove and not be deeply affected by that.
Yeah, Oscar-winning documentary.
Fantastic
film, and then Blackfish, on the heels of that, which caused, it made such an impact culturally. I mean, everybody was talking about that movie.
Yeah, you can actually see, I was just talking about this last night, you can see the day that if you zoom out of the SeaWorld, look at the value of SeaWorld stock, you can see the day that Blackfish aired on CNN for the first time, because they lost like $3 billion of market share the very next day. Mm-hmm. So the stock was up here and it just drops out of the sky and it's never recovered. It's been down there ever since. And I think the power of social media and, like what happened with United, 10 years ago, that guy could have gotten dragged off the airplane and none
Nobody
of us would have known.
Yeah. And you have CEOs that are operating in an old paradigm where they don't understand the way in which you need to communicate in this day and age in order to, first avoid those incidents from happening, but then, to initiate an appropriate response that's going to rehabilitate the damage that's caused. I mean,
Right.
that guy just dug his grave in the way that company responded to that situation.
Right. I really love I know social media there can be bad things about it, right? Like when the vegan car got announced, I mean, I was getting death threats. I was having people tell me, I hope you wreck and I hope you die at Daytona. It's just
Is that
ridiculous.
coming in on Twitter, or are those on like NASCAR forums? Or?
No, Twitter and Facebook.
A lot of frogs and MAGA people.
Unbelievable. And also the blackfish. When I left the flowers for Tillicum at SeaWorld, when Tillicum, the orca from Blackfish, died, like somebody even left a message on I think this was on Instagram, but he was like, they shouldn't have issued you a trespassing fine. You should have been shot. Just
God.
ridiculous. Like people are so very defensive, especially I think actually the vegan car probably touched more.
What is the nerve that's getting pinched, though? You know what I mean? It's like the reaction is so strong and violent.
Yeah.
So what is it that's being triggered in people that's creating that kind of a response? Because I can't imagine that it's not like they're shareholders in SeaWorld, or, what is it that they're
Right.
protecting?
I think, this is just my theory, but I feel like they're feeling defensive because they know they're on the wrong side. They know we're right. They know that eating animals hurts the planet. Clearly it hurts billions of animals. They know it's not healthy. And by being vegan, we're sort of throwing in their face, you're doing it wrong. And I know people, there is a sort of like, you're not supposed to judge people. You shouldn't be judgmental. But how can you not? I try to not judge if somebody doesn't know the facts. But when somebody actually knows the hurt, that the cruelty, the awfulness of factory farming and the meat and dairy industry, when they know how much pollution is happening, how much deforestation, how the oceans are acidifying, and more greenhouse gas emissions come from raising animals for food than the entire transportation sector, when they know all these things and they still continue on with their normal way of eating, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand how somebody can see it and then
human behavior
bury it somehow.
is a black box in many ways, and I think it's very difficult for people to change habits that they have adhered to their entire life. It's hard, and I think somebody who is on the receiving end of all of that information and has processed it and still doesn't change their behavior is living in this, sort of dichotomous world where they're, I'm sure, look, nobody is in support, unless you own a factory farm, you're not in support of factory farming. There's nobody's like supporting like the slaughter of all these, it's like, we all know it's terrible,
right?
But we just file it into this dark compartment in the back of our brains and try to carry on. And for some people, that becomes untenable, and other people are able to compartmentalize it. But when you bring it up, they don't want to look at it because they know on some level, however conscious or unconscious, that their actions are not in alignment with their core values of their higher self,
right?
And that gets poked, and that's uncomfortable. So it's not surprising, I suppose, that a natural human reaction would be to react, to like lash out against that, because it's not fun to look at your own shit.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that really, really has been bugging me lately is seeing animal rescue groups, like groups that are rescuing cats and dogs that then are serving meat at their events. And I'm like, okay, so you want to help these animals, but these ones it's okay for you to be cooking up. I can't understand.
Humans are weird that way.
Why do we knit sweaters for one species and then the other species it's just treated like it has no feelings? It's so weird to me.
But as an advocate, or as somebody who's interested in like sort of figuring out the best way to carry a message that's going to provoke the most change, it's an interesting discussion to have, because you have a choice. You can either attack those people and say, how could you do this but not this? Or you can say, this is amazing that you're saving these dogs, and perhaps find a more gentle way to say, there's other things we can look at too. This is a great thing to be doing. Let's expand on it and look at other areas that need redress, and which strategy is going to be more likely to get somebody to kind of move in a positive direction.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult question. I don't know the answer of how to best be effective. And I, for sure, I'm not always, I can be pretty blunt. So I think it was just yesterday, somebody asked me, it was actually a NASCAR person, asked me on Twitter, do we still do eggs for Easter, or is this gross now? What do you do? And then asked me, tagged me in the tweet and said, what do you do? What is your solution? And I wrote back and I just said, in my humble opinion, it's like coloring and then eating chickens' menstrual cycles / periods is pretty gross. So, and then I linked to
yeah, I would have answered it differently, but go ahead.
So then I linked to, I found a ceramic egg that's like a dyeable egg that's ceramic, that is like a vegan solution if you want to dye eggs with your kids. But so many of the people that responded were like, and I'll never be able to look at an egg the same way ever again. But it's really effective, right? It sort of shocks people at first, but then they think about it and they're like, geez, that is a chicken's period. I didn't realize that's what I've been eating for breakfast all these years.
Yeah, it's weird when you've been looking at something in a certain way your entire life, and there's another perspective on it that's never been raised. Sometimes that doesn't work, but sometimes it's effective.
Yeah, I found it to be really effective. That one especially, because people just, it really grosses them out. So I think I've stopped a lot of people from eating eggs by saying that.
Well, let's track it back a little bit. Like, I'm interested in, how you grew up and what inspired you to get into racing in the first place, because it wasn't part of your family. It's not like you grew up in a family of race car drivers. I mean, you grew up in Minnesota, and then you studied biology at UC San Diego. Racing wasn't part of the the young girl's dream for you, right?
Right. It was not a part of the plan at all. I started a bucket list in high school, which some people think is morbid. They're like, why bucket lists are for people when you're getting old, things you want to do before you die. But I started mine in high school, and one of the things on my bucket list was to drive a race car, because I was always getting in trouble for speeding, and I loved speed, and I just wanted to feel what it would feel like to drive a car to its limit and to not get in trouble for it, right?
So you were getting speeding tickets in high school?
I was getting a lot of...
Were you getting in trouble? What kind of kid were you?
Yeah, I mean, the first year that I had my license, I got a letter from the state of Arizona saying that I was a danger to society because I had received an excessive number of speeding tickets, and I had to go to like a class.
How many did you get?
I don't remember how many I got, but it was enough to, I had to go to the school the driving school in order to keep my license. So I had gotten quite a few. And I don't know, I just love speed. I love speed, and I have a little bit of an adrenaline addiction, I think. Like, I like jumping. I've gone skydiving a few times, and paragliding, and I did bungee jumping, which I'm scared of heights. I don't think I'll ever do it again because it was pretty scary. I did that twice. But I just like, I don't know, I like things that like get my blood pumping. And so speed, heights I don't like, but speed I like. And so it was on my bucket list, and I had saved up my money, and I went to a racing school, and I was fast. I was actually a second quicker than the instructor.
How old were you then?
So this was college years. So this is 2000. It was, I want to say it was like October of 2000.
And is this before or after you were working as a body double for Catherine Zeta-Jones?
This was after. I actually left one of the movies I was working for her on. I left early to go to the racing school. I left like a couple days before we wrapped, and she was like, "What is this I hear about you driving race cars?" She was scared I was going to get hurt.
How long did you work with her?
I worked with her on the first movie was the first movie was Traffic, and then
that must have been a cool experience.
Yeah, it was great.
I know the writer on that movie.
Traffic,
it's an amazing movie.
America's Sweethearts was the comedy, which was really fun. We shot that in Vegas, and then they asked me to go do Oceans. What was it? Oceans 12 that she was in, one of the Oceans movies. And unfortunately, I had my first race scheduled. So I was trying to build this racing career. And so I stopped doing all that stuff. I just started pouring everything into racing. You had this little, mini Hollywood career going on for a minute. And then you're like, I'm going to go learn how to race cars. Was it like, this is just going to be a fun thing because it's on my bucket list? Or were you like, I want to do this seriously? No, it was totally a bucket list thing. So I had always wanted to race, and I didn't want to act or anything. I was doing the doubling work to like pay my bills, to pay my rent. And it was definitely money that I made working on those films that allowed me to go to the racing schools, because those are not cheap either. But I didn't think I was ever going to do it again. Yeah, I mean, I thought I was going to like have that experience and check it off my list, like the bungee jump, and never do it again. But then I was fast, and there was a race team owner, sort of like a regional level NASCAR owner that was there at the track, and he came over to me, and at first he was just kind of like, who are you here with? And I said, nobody, I'm just here by myself. And he's like, that's really strange, because usually when we have women drivers, come through the school, they've been like dragged by their husbands or their boyfriends, and they don't really want to be here. I was like, no, I've always wanted to race. And then he just kind of said, normally I would never encourage somebody to get into racing because it is so expensive, and it's just, it's a very tough sport. But you were really fast, and you were the fastest car on the track. And what is it like? Sorry to interrupt, but like, I'm interested in what makes a great driver, like, or somebody who shows talent obviously this guy saw something in you, a diamond in the rough or whatever, but like, what is it that he was able to see? I mean, to me, not knowing anything about racing, it's like, all right, well, you can go as fast as the car can go, right? So what is it that the driver is doing, or what demonstration of talent distinguishes somebody who's, going to just be like everybody else versus somebody who really understands like how to do this properly? I mean, I honestly think so. I mean, for me, obviously that day I hadn't had seat time. That was my first day in a race car, so I didn't really know what I was doing, but I wasn't afraid of speed, and I was able to go into the corners, fast, and I wasn't afraid to like sort of push the car. And so I think he just saw that, and then he kind of explained that the reason, I'd normally never encourage somebody to get into racing, but because you're a woman and there's so few women in our sport, I really think you should pursue this because you showed some talent today, and there's not very many women out there. So maybe you could find sponsorship, even though you don't have your own money to race. Because I immediately explained, I was like, I don't have the kind of money it takes to drive race cars on the weekend. Like, I'm not rich. And he said you might be able to find sponsors. But then after that, I really do believe it's spending time in the race car. I mean, if you have the basics, right? You're not afraid of speed. You're able to go into corners fast. You're not afraid of like losing control of the car, getting it to that edge where you're comfortable with it, almost losing control. Then you've got the basics. And then it's really just getting seat time and being in the race car. And that, the problem with that is really expensive, because every time you drive a race car, there's a possibility that you wreck it. It's expensive to get the cars on the track. Really for the ARCA series, like when I ran Daytona, we had, practice session the month before where we spend like 3 days turning laps. But at Talladega, there's no test sessions anymore. And you hadn't raced in 2 years. So like, that's like a long period of time without being behind the wheel of a car like that, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's a whole other tangent, but, I'd love to hear like how you prepare for a race like that when, it's like if you're a runner, you go out and run. If you're, whatever you do as an athlete, that's what you train and practice every day. But, race car driving, you can't get in the car. So, how do you, we can talk about that in a minute. I don't want to get distracted. So go ahead. So wait, do you want to talk about the preparation or? No, let's talk about what we were talking about before. Okay. I'm all, so now we're all confused. We're talking about like what he said to me. Yeah, like how you got your career on its feet. Right. So it was really just, it was that 10-minute conversation with this stranger that I didn't know that totally changed the course of my life, because that happened on a weekend. And then that following Monday, I started to approach sports marketing companies, and I said, look, I have no racing experience, but I showed some talent, and this race team owner believed in what I did.
And you were just cold calling?
Yeah. I just approached sports marketing companies, and then one company was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. We'll try it. We don't have any other race car drivers. They were handling like snowboarders and surfers and skaters. And they were like, but this is really cool. It's not something we normally do, but we'll try it. And so we started looking for sponsors, and it took us 9 months to find the first sponsorship. And at that time, it was just to run this little short track in San Diego. It was called Cajon Speedway. It's gone now. And I needed, I think, $1,500 a race to run. Mm-hmm. And now, when I go out and look, it's, 100,000, or in the case of the vegan car with the display and the food, it's 200,000. So it gets a lot more expensive, but of course you're reaching many more people. So I started racing. In my very first race, I fought for the lead. And I was just hooked.
Very first race.
Yeah. Very first race. And actually, the guy that I was racing against, we were like door to door. He came over to me after the race, and he shook my hand, and he said, I have to admit, like, when you showed up here, I was kind of skeptical, and, there's not very many girls at the track, but he was like, you were the most fun to race. Like, I was so much faster than everybody else, but you were actually the only person that I was like really having to race.
Yeah. And that guy's probably been racing for years and years and years.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know like how long he had been out there, but he was basically like, thanks for making racing fun again, because I didn't have anybody to race out there, and like, you were actually as quick as me, and that was really fun.
So that must have left you thinking like, oh, I am like pretty good at this. Like there could be a thing here. Yeah,
I knew that like, okay, I'm showing promise that I was able to run up front. And then I ran a second race in Texas. So I only got sponsorship. That first sponsorship was like $3,000. It was enough to go to 2 races. And I was just hooked. And I, right then and there, decided, you know what, I want to chase this. Like, I know this doesn't make sense. And my family, certainly, and my friends, I think, thought I had lost my mind, because here I had gone to school in science and biology, right. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm going to move to North Carolina and be a NASCAR driver. And I think they were like, ooh, what happened to her?
Well, on some level, your parents, you were the menace to society in high school, right? For speeding all the time. So it couldn't have come as that big of a shock.
It was just such a different path from the one that I had been on.
Yeah, I get it.
And it didn't actually make sense to me either. So I packed up, I moved to North Carolina, packed up I had a Volkswagen GTI, put all my stuff in my car, got my helmet. I got to North Carolina, didn't know a single person. I didn't have a job. I had no race car, no sponsor, no race team. I just had my helmet.
Like, what year is this?
This is 2002.
Oh, it's not that long ago.
And then I just started, trying to get in a race car whenever I could. Crappy race cars, slow race cars that, were so low on, the teams were so low on budget that we couldn't even afford to buy new tires for the race. We'd be using hand-me-downs from, other big teams that had money that didn't want to use used tires. Mm-hmm. And you have to get into, when you don't have money and you're coming into the sport, you have to get into just every car you can just to get the experience. But now I've gotten to the point where, 2007, I really got a taste of being in a fast car. I was in open wheel cars. I did a couple of races over in Indy Pro Series, and I was with a fast team. When we unloaded, I expected to be in the top 5. And once you get a taste of that, of like running up front and being in contention to win the race, now I'm at the stage where I never want to go back to running with a car that I don't have a shot to win at. Mm-hmm. So I knew at Daytona when I unloaded, I'm with a good team. Venturini's a fantastic team, and I knew, I have a shot to win this race. I could be the first woman to win an ARCA race, and I'll have another shot at Talladega in the vegan car. How amazing would it be if the first win for a woman in an ARCA car in history is in the vegan-powered car, because that picture will go everywhere.
Not only is she a woman, she's vegan too? Can't we just get these one at a time?
I know. When I first started talking about this vegan car, it's funny, I did an interview with like a NASCAR news site, and they wrote a story. And in the story, I was saying, like, I'm not trying to make people like go vegan cold turkey. I'm just saying, like, try Meatless Mondays, give it a shot, try some of these vegan meats. I'm not gonna like show up at the racetrack and like take everybody's meat away. And what did they do? Now, the headline was normal and the article used all my real quotes. But then when they like sent it out on social media, the title was something like, Leilani Munter wants to take away NASCAR's barbecue.
Like, yeah. The menacing, evil Leilani is, out to get you and take away what you love the most.
I was like, no, that's not what I said.
She's going to climb down your chimney and steal your Christmas presents, too.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. They're like, oh, first she's trying to get us all to drive electric cars, and now she's taking away my meat, too.
Right.
It's kind of funny.
So what was the first like big break? Was there one, or was it just a natural progression of getting better and getting faster?
I feel like my first big break was probably when I moved over into the open wheel cars in 2007, because it was the first time, I didn't have enough funding to get into a great race car, like a top winning car before then. And when I went over into Indy Pro Series, I only had sponsorship for 2 races. But like I qualified 5th for my first race. And that's another situation we were talking about, like not being able to practice. I had to turn, I think 100 laps in front of the IndyCar officials to get my license. And I did really well and I got my license. And there was another driver there. It's funny. There's another driver there that had tons of money, but they wouldn't give him his license because he was so far off the pace and he was all over the track. And so, they don't give the IndyCar licenses out to just anybody. You have to actually show that you're capable.
And why didn't you, maybe this is a naive question, but why didn't you stay in open wheel and like pursue that Indy path?
I loved driving the open wheel cars. There were 2 things that were working against us there. One, they had TV time, but it was hardly anybody watched the races. The amount of people that were tuning in was like 50,000 people versus, ARCA, which had, 1 million people.
So
and
unless
the cost
you pursue
was
it,
the same.
Oh, it's the same? I would have thought it would have been more actually for those cars.
So the Indy Pro Series is about 100. It was about 100,000 a race. So it's about the same as ARCA. And so unless you find a company that has a CEO that just loves open wheel racing, like they like Formula One, they like IndyCar, and they don't care that there's less people watching. They think the cars are cooler, and it's not about the numbers, it's about having a cool IndyCar. It's hard to sort of argue the case for that series when people can say, well, why wouldn't we just take that money and run ARCA and have a million viewers instead of...
Unless you pursue it to Formula One in Europe, right, where it's a whole different thing. Yeah,
it's just, my first race was in a stock car, and that was what I'd spent most of my time in. And really in the United States, that's the king of racing. The only race, not certainly people watch IndyCar, but the one race everybody watches is like the Indy 500. But then if you look at the numbers on the other races, it drops significantly. So it's just harder. It was harder for me to actually find sponsors, and then they lost their television package. So then even the small amount of viewers that we had was gone. Gotcha. And so then I was just like, when I found that out, I was like, and I can't. Right. How can I possibly sell this now to a company? And so that's when I came back to stock cars. And, I don't know how long I'll be racing. This race in the vegan powered car at Talladega could be my last race because that's all I have funding for right now. So I always have this sort of underlying, like, every time I show up, I'm like at Daytona. I only had sponsorship for Daytona. I thought Daytona might be my last race, but then here I was, running in the top 5. And I remember pulling into the garage and being like, I'm not ready to walk away from the sport yet. Like I've still got it. I've still got something to prove. I can still drive a race car and I could still win. So I'll get I'll get that shot at Talladega, but after that, there's no other races on my schedule. So I'm always like sort of thinking I could be retired at any point.
If you didn't have this environmental vegan advocacy aspect to what you do, I would imagine that you could potentially gather the sponsors so that you could be racing every weekend, right? Like Landon's racing all the time. He's on a team. That's the way, most of these guys operate.
Yeah, I've walked away from...
You do like 1-year contracts, or I don't know how it works, but it's a season, right? It's not just a race by race thing.
I've walked away from 2 sponsorships that were full rides, like millions of dollars, because the companies did not align with what I believed in. And I mean, the marketing people just thought I was crazy. They were like, you're kidding me, right? Like, you don't have a ride and you're turning down like a multi-million-dollar deal because you don't like what the company does in this one little thing. And I was just like, yes, I can't do that. I don't feel good about
like,
them.
you're insane, right?
Yeah. And maybe it was. I mean, I'd probably be a lot further higher up the sport had I taken that deal. And then there was another sponsor that was a big sponsor. And interestingly enough, they themselves weren't doing anything wrong. But when I got the phone call from the marketing person, they said, they need you. They love your lifestyle. They love that you're so passionate about the environment. They think that's great. But the CEO has like some concerns about how much you're speaking out against big oil. I had just gotten back from the BP oil spill, from like my second trip to the BP oil spill. And so they were essentially asking me, saying like, you can be environmental, but like, you're going to have to dial back on like the oil thing. And so then I said no to that one too. But even though that company was not actually doing anything that was bad to the environment, I would have said yes.
The CEO is buddies with he plays golf with who knows.
They never told me the backstory of it. But so there's, I mean, sometimes I wonder like, oh, what would have happened if I had actually had a chance to race full time and be in a car every weekend? Like, yeah, especially after Daytona, where, I raced my way all the way up to 4th place and I'm running in the top 5, like at the end of the race.
And you hadn't raced in 2 years.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I mean, I had a bunch of people say that, like, oh my God, you haven't been in a race car in 2 years and you could have won that race. Like, how good would you be if you were out there every weekend? And I feel like I could be really good and I feel like I could win a race, but I just don't have the sponsorship to do that.
You got to get your buddy Elon Musk on board to write that check.
Well, that doesn't make any sense though, because Tesla is
I know,
not.
I know. He could create some shell company and have it funnel to you through some, overseas whatever. So.
Well, I hope one day. I mean, I really hope that Tesla series that's starting up in Europe is going to be successful. They just actually unveiled the schedule. And there's no races in the U.S. yet. It's all overseas. But I think that has the potential to do really well. There is already an open wheel electric series called Formula E.
Right.
But I think this Tesla series, the Model S's are just such a beautiful car. I think they're just gorgeous. And
so in that, does everybody race a Tesla? Or you can't have some other kind of electric car? I
mean, I think eventually they could open up to other electric cars, but right now the only cars that can possibly go that distance at that speed are Teslas. So they'll all be P100Ds and they're modified. They're beautiful. I'll show you a picture of it.
Aren't there some new companies coming up though? I think at CES they unveiled some other kind of electric supercar. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's always other ones in the mix, but it's really about whether or not they can get to the actual production, right? So there's lots of people unveiling. Yeah, there's lots of people unveiling like really cool, beautiful, and there's one of them. It's a whole different thing for them to be able to take that into production and create 100,000 of them in a year or whatever.
Create a company that's now more valuable than Ford.
And GM. Yeah,
and GM?
It's the most valuable American car company in the world.
That's crazy.
I just totally believe in that company. I remember taking my first tour of the Tesla factory and I was just totally blown away and like, again, like the hair on the back of my neck stood up and I thought, wow, this is really something very special is happening in this building. And, I just love my car. I haven't bought gasoline since September 2013.
I have friends that have Teslas and I have friends that are Tesla fanatics. but I've never seen like an ambassador of a product be so passionate as you are about your Tesla, like just based on social media.
I just love the car, and it's so fun to drive. Like, you know why I loved it so much, I think, was that it was the first car that existed in the world that I could have all the things that I wanted as a race car driver: the speed, the handling, the sexiness of the look of the car, and it not burn any gas. Because the other choices just weren't
Checks
sexy.
every box. It's like a perfect car in every category. Safety too.
Right.
You know, the technology, it's unbelievable.
And it's beautiful. Like, I've had that car for so many years, but I still, every time I park it, I kind of glance back at him like, oh, she's so pretty.
So is the Tesla that you have the Tesla that was in Racing to Extinction?
No, that's a different one.
That was like a prototype just for the movie, right? With the crazy paint on it and the projector and the whole thing?
So that was actually, we bought it, OPS bought that car just as a normal stock P85 Plus Tesla, and then I drove it off the lot and I took it over to Obscura in San Francisco, and they immediately just started ripping the interior out of the car.
Explain what Obscura is.
So Obscura is the company. So if you've seen Racing Extinction, at the end of the movie, we do all these really incredible projection events. And Obscura is the company the digital art company that can light up these huge buildings. So it's not just my car doing projections. Certainly I use the Tesla in Racing Extinction. So I'll just explain the Tesla quickly for people who haven't seen Racing Extinction. The car I drive in Racing Extinction is this really sort of cool James Bond version of a Tesla. So it has a 15,000 lumen projection system that comes out of the back of the Tesla. So I could project from 1,000 feet away, images that were, 100 feet high or more. And it also had an amazing camera that came out of the frunk of the car. They call it the frunk, meaning front trunk. Mm-hmm. And it was a high-def camera that it's a FLIR camera, so it allows you to see carbon dioxide and methane. It's got a really special color filter on it, so it essentially makes the pollution that we're putting in the air visible
to the eye.
And I think I wish pollution was visible, because if we could see those gases, certainly we would not be having all these problems. It's that we can't see it. And so in the film, we do some really cool stuff where, we were in New York and I had the projector out of the back of the Tesla, but I was also running the high-def FLIR out of the front. And I was filming an SUV sitting at a stoplight, and then I was live projecting the image that we were shooting onto the side of a building. So, like a 15-story high image. So the guy in the car that was driving this SUV, is looking up at the building and seeing himself and seeing the emissions coming out of the back of his car. It's very, very powerful imagery. And then, the other thing the car had on it was this really cool, it's called electroluminescent paint. And it essentially allowed the car to change colors. The car kind of glowed, and we could change the design on it. It was kind of inspired by bioluminescent ocean creatures. And they didn't really explain this in the movie, because you just run out of time when you're editing down to 90 minutes. But the purpose of that was actually so that when I was doing projections in places where I didn't have permission, oil refineries or the Koch brothers buildings, that I could sort of hide in plain sight. So I would have the lights on when I was doing the projecting. So when they were calling the police or, security to come after us, they're describing a glowing car with bright blue, lights on it and this big projector out the back. And then in just the course, of a minute, I can turn everything. I mean, the paint is an immediate, it's literally I hit a button and the car just goes gray. So that's immediate. And then, just pulling in the projector. And so then they drive right past me. Yeah, because they're looking for a glowing car, and I just totally blend in with the background after that.
Some of the imagery that came out of that experiment is just mind-blowing. I mean, there were a lot of viral moments of that, with the projection of the whale and the Empire State Building and things that you guys did. Is just powerful and beautiful. And weren't you like projecting like statistics on the side of corporate headquarters, were less than flattering?
Yeah, we were. I think we projected onto one of the. It was like at the David Koch Theater, and we were projecting about how burning fossil fuels is acidifying our oceans. We tried to project, images that were symbolic to the buildings that we were sort of tagging, and it's. We're not doing any harm. It's not a permanent thing. It's just we're projecting photons onto your building and then it's gone. Mm-hmm. But we were at a Shell oil refinery and we projected, the Shell oil logo, and then it turned into a real shell. And then we showed what happens to the shell when it's sitting in an ocean that is becoming, drastically more and more every day, more acidified. And I was just actually talking to our director, Louis Hauth, today. And we were talking about how the Great Barrier Reef it's going through its second mass bleaching. So it already had like 90% of the reef had bleached, mm-hmm. and they're going through another mass bleaching. And that's like the largest living structure on Earth. And I'm so glad I went to see it. I went to Australia actually for a vegan festival, the Adelaide Vegan Festival. Oh, cool. And I went early and I went to go scuba diving. My husband and I went scuba diving in the very southern tip of the Great Barrier Reef, which is still beautiful. It hasn't had any of the damage yet. And it was so beautiful, but at the same time I felt like I was like saying goodbye to it, Mm.
Yeah, it's a tenuous time. We really are butting up against this crazy tipping point, and we need as many people to be as educated as possible to avert the horrific disaster that we're on the precipice of self-creating.
That's awful. It's overwhelmingly depressing sometimes to know all these things. Like I can kind of understand why some people tune it out. They don't want to know because it is hard to like see all this bad news all the time. It's awful to think, all these beautiful things that we're seeing, these beautiful creatures, and we're losing all of it. We're killing it all off.
And it's hard to care about something that's not in your face. It's like we don't see the factory farms, and the ocean is underwater. So it's like it's not part of your daily experience. Right. So it's easy to avoid confronting it.
Right.
I think. But you got involved in racing Extinction because you were a volunteer on the Cove, right? So you began did you work out like for the organization that produced that, or were you actually working on the movie?
So no, I didn't work on the Cove at all. I saw the Cove and was just completely blown away by it. And the first words out of my mouth when I was finally able to talk, because it's a very emotional movie, was I looked at my husband and I said, we're going to Japan and we're going to help Rick O'Barry end this.
Oh, so you volunteered for the organization after seeing the movie?
Well, it's actually two different organizations. So I started volunteering for Rick O'Barry's Dolphin Project. So Rick is the activist. He's the one that...
featured in the movie.
Yeah, that Louis follows over to Taiji, and he teaches Louis all about what's going on. And Louis is the filmmaker, and that's Oceanic Preservation Society. So they made the Cove, and then they made Racing Extinction. So I started just volunteering for Rick and going over to Taiji and, documenting that the dolphin slaughter was still happening. It was funny, when the Cove won the Academy Award, a lot of people were confused when I said that I was going back to Taiji, and were like, wait, why are you going back to Taiji? Hasn't that stopped?
Yeah, it's over with now.
And I was like, no, it hasn't stopped. It's still going on. Why do you think that it stopped? And they're like, well,
the movie was made.
The movie won the Academy Award. I guess I just assumed it would end after the movie won the Academy Award. And I was like, oh no, it hasn't ended. It's still going on, and it is still happening. It feels, it's one of those issues that you just feel really helpless about, because you can stop it by, of course, not supporting dolphin shows and not going to places like SeaWorld. But when you're actually physically there, there's nothing you can do to help them. You're sort of just bearing witness. It's a very tough trip to make. I was just there. I made my 4th trip there in December. So then through working with Rick O'Barry, I started getting really passionate about it, and I wanted to raise more awareness about it. So I was doing screenings all over the place. And my brother-in-law is Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead, and he watched the movie.
First of all, hold on a second. Your brother-in-law is in the Grateful Dead. That's crazy, right? So you're like, on what side of your family?
So my older sister, Natasha, is married to Bobby, and he's also a super passionate activist. So of course, when I saw The Cove, I then sent him a copy of The Cove, and I was like, you guys have to watch this. And he was, of course, like everyone who watches The Cove, was so moved and was like, how can I help? So we got a theater in San Francisco to donate their theater for the night. And we did, Bobby played like a little acoustic set, but he played that after we played The Cove. So in order to see Bobby play, so we had a bunch of deadheads.
You couldn't leave early. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we had a bunch of deadheads in there, and like, you know, doors closed, you watch the film, and then afterwards we did a Q&A, and Louis came for that screening. So that was actually the first time that I met Louis. I had emailed with him, but we met for the first time there. And so Louis was there, Rick O'Barry, Bobby then played his set, and it was all raising awareness and raising funds for Rick O'Barry's Dolphin Project. So that's when Louis and I really started to talk, and then we lit up the Empire State Building, red. This was not with Racing Extinction, but before, we were just doing it to raise awareness about the dolphins that were being killed. And it was when we were there at the Empire State Building, we were having a couple cocktails and, you know, looking at the light. And I said, you know, all these people have seen The Cove, but it's like the activists and the ocean lovers and the documentary film, you know, geeks and the environmental community, but like the people that are actually buying tickets to the dolphin shows are not watching it. Those are NASCAR fans. Like, do you think we could get a Cove car put together? If I raised the funds, if I did like a crowdfunding and I raised the money to go to the race, and I asked Louis if he would donate 1,000 DVDs to give away to the fans, and I asked Rick if he would come in and sign autographs. And we ended up putting up a crowdfunding page, and we raised all the money to go. And then it was at the race with the Cove car at Daytona that Louis was filming there. And he kind of said, so I've got a job for you in our next film. And I didn't know what it was, and he couldn't tell me that weekend. But I found out a few weeks later, you know, that they wanted to do projections out of the car. And the funny thing was, when they first showed it to me, the projector was on the back of like a van.
Right. So Obscura had kind of mocked up like what they wanted to do.
Yeah. It wasn't very sexy looking.
Like a pervy.
It was like a white van with like a projector on the back. And I immediately looked at Louis and I was like, I mean, you want it to be an electric car, right? And he's like,
sexy.
Yeah. And then I immediately was
authentic.
Like, well, then we have to get a Tesla. And
so call Elon.
Yeah, so then I reached out to Elon, and I took Louis.
So first of all, like, how do you reach out to Elon? Like, how does that happen?
So I had already been in contact with Elon we had already been in contact, just because, I mean, naturally when there's an electric car coming out that's fast, like that was something that interests me. And so we had also connected. There was a film called Revenge of the Electric Car that it was the same guy who did Who Killed the Electric Car, Chris Payne. And I did some driving in that. I drove Chris Payne's little roadster. So I had met Elon at that, the premiere of Revenge of the Electric Car, and we had emailed a bunch before. And so anyway, I told him like I really wanted him to meet Louis Sohoyas, and so I took Louis to SpaceX, and we showed Elon the whole idea of like these cool projections, and we want to, you know, put this big projector on the car, and it had definitely evolved a lot more than it was when we showed him. Like,
imagine this super James Bond, like, I mean, that car is like out of a crazy movie. Like it could be in Fast and the Furious or something. I mean, it's so sexy and awesome and unique.
Yeah. I mean, we hadn't even dreamed up the color changing thing at that time. It was really just all about the projections. I don't even think we had dreamed up the carbon dioxide and methane camera either. I think it was just all about the projections at that point. And Elon was, of course, like, oh, that's awesome. And then the one thing that we, you know, the favor we had to ask for, because at that time you could not get the fast, sporty versions of the Tesla with vegan seats.
Right.
It was only leather. And so I was like, oh, like, we can't have leather in the car, but we still need the fastest one. So then he was like, no, I can do that. But it was a big pain because they had 2 separate lines. And then I asked for my car for the same thing because I ordered my car around the same time that we ordered the Racing Extinction one. And then, by fall of that year, they had changed the line so that now you can have vegan seats in any Tesla. And they've even got a vegan leather that's that they started to offer with the Model X.
That's pretty new too. I mean, I know that it was kind of a running thing for a while that having the full vegan interior. They didn't initially have that, did they?
So they had, they always had the cloth seats, but they were only available in like the base model. You couldn't, if you got the performance version or the performance plus, which is what we got for Racing Extinction and what I bought, it was only leather. So, but then, he definitely made the exception, and then they changed it. I mean, that same year it changed to where anybody could get it. And then you just tell them that you want the steering wheel to also be vegan, and they'll do a vegan steering wheel.
What is that guy like? What is Elon like?
What is Elon like? I mean, he's a genius. He's amazing. He's great. I mean, he's trying to change the world for the better, and he's doing it. He's incredibly smart. He takes on huge challenges and just makes them happen in many ways. I think he's just one of the most influential and is changing the world in a way that nobody has before. Like, I know people like to compare him to Steve Jobs, and it's like, yeah, Steve Jobs was amazing, but like phones and iPods is not the same as like rockets that are going to take us to Mars and make us an interplanetary species. Like, that's a totally different kind of changing the world.
And the solar farms and
Tesla.
It's like the diversification with which his big dreams are propagating is just beyond prolific. Like, it's insane. Like, what he's dreaming up and then actually manifesting.
Right.
It's really quite something.
Yeah, I mean,
he's
talked to us.
Like, when you talk, I mean, it's like he just, he's a genius, but like, you can't be a normal person. Like, and
he is a normal person. Yeah, he's funny. He's got a great sense of humor. He's great. I mean, he is a normal person. I know, like, there's, I don't mean
that pejoratively, but I mean like unique and in very specific ways.
I often feel like when people are talking to Elon that sometimes he's like trying to slow down his brain to be stupid enough to understand normal people.
He's got to dumb it down so that he can be present with whatever he's hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just, he thinks about really big issues, really big, deep things. Like artificial intelligence is something, that I started to learn about. That's very scary. I don't know if you've...
Yeah, I mean, I'm up on that. I mean, he's one of the few, influential individuals who's coming out and saying, listen, this is really scary stuff. We got to like really think hard and long about how we're doing this, or we're going to get ourselves into some really big trouble. And, he's sounding alarms that I think other people think are premature, but, I would stake my bet in his perspective.
There's a really good book that I read on Elon's recommendation about artificial intelligence. It's called Our Final Invention. If that doesn't... Right, like
it's all baked into that title, right?
Right there.
We're going to innovate ourselves right out of our survival, our ability to survive.
It's a fantastic book. Mm-hmm. You should definitely, if it interests you at all, this whole AI thing, I would definitely check it out. I mean, there's just so many, he's involved with like so many interesting things, but he's funny and he's nice and he's kind and he's caring, and he's overwhelmed by all the stuff that he's doing, right? Like, he's got SpaceX and Tesla, and like, it's a lot that he's doing. And I remember when we walked through the factory, like, he was talking about like, none of the other 3 car companies were building an electric car. Like, it's not like I didn't know, like, the odds were against me and I was most likely going to totally fail. and that this was going to be a total nightmare. Like, and he, you know, at the time they were losing tons and tons of money.
Right.
They had just won Motor Trend Car of the Year, but they were still losing millions and millions every quarter. And, you know, because they were having to invest so much in the infrastructure and the charging and in developing the cars. And it was just so much. And I mean, he basically said, like, I did it because, like, none of them were doing it, and they weren't going to do it. And it's true. They were not, none of the big three were making any sort of effort to get us off of fossil fuels. And it pisses me off because it's this thing of, like, the old guard that doesn't have to innovate because we're just stuck with their product, because all of us have to have wheels. We all need to get to work. We all need to, you know, drive around. We have to have cars. And there was no choice in the system for so many years. The oil companies drill for the oil, and the car companies sell us these internal combustion engine cars. And you have no choice. Even if you hate the oil companies, you had to, you know, own a car and drive a car.
And those companies are living and breathing on quarterly profits. So there's a lot more incentive to make sure that your bottom line and your revenues are on point, you know, for Q1, Q2, you know, whatever, than it is what's happening in 10 years. You know, it's because these people, they're, you know, they're not the executives that work in these companies. Like, you know, I wouldn't vilify them. They're just capitalists doing their job, and they're trying to protect their job, right? So who's the person who's in charge of foreseeing and forecasting, you know, beyond that? Like, that person is going to go to the CEO and say, you need to take all of this revenue and reinvest it in new ways of manufacturing so we can develop batteries. And, you know, it's like, that's going to end up in losses. Right. And Wall Street's not going to look favorably on that. So systemically, it doesn't encourage or induce those companies that are stuck in that system to, you know, do what Elon's has been able to do.
But he came really close to failing.
Yeah.
Like, Tesla came really close to going under. And I'm super stoked to see all these new electric cars that are coming out and how all the other companies are jumping on the bandwagon now. It's great. But to me, my loyalty and my respect will always lie with Tesla, because if Tesla hadn't done what they did, nothing would be changing. These guys are only building electric cars now because they have to compete with Tesla. They don't have a choice. A new market
has been created, and they've got to compete in it. Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Yeah. So, I mean, even if you take away, like, SpaceX and AI and solar, and you just focus on what he did with the transportation industry, like, that alone, I think, has changed the world in a bigger way than Apple.
And Racing Extinction is this big success. Tons of people see this movie. Yeah. And you have since gone, I mean, you've done a lot of things. You've, like, marched with Mark Ruffalo and Leonardo DiCaprio. You spoke at the UN in Geneva, right? Like, you're traveling a lot, and you know, you're not just at the Veg Fest. Like, you're really, you know, in front of influential crowds of people. So how do you think about, you know, how you approach those kinds of people and carry the message?
I mean, I hope more and more people will start speaking up about this stuff. I feel like one of the reasons people don't speak up is because, you know, Leo gets trashed all the time for being an environmentalist, yet he flies on a plane. And I'm like, what do you expect Leo to do? Is he supposed to, like, ride a bike to, I mean, can we please be a little bit...
Bagley Jr. on it?
Yeah, can we be, like, realistic here? People, you know, I mean, when we marched in the climate march, the People's Climate March in New York, like, I remember there was a reporter coming up, like, trying to harass him and, you know, saying something like, oh, you know, it's great that you do all these great things. Do you want to talk about the fuel use on the yacht that you were on? Or, you know, just these ridiculous... people that are so critical. And I see that when I share stuff that Leo does, I'll always see these negative comments about, oh, you know, really rich coming from him. You know, is he getting on his private jet and flying off to some yacht? And I'm just like, he has done so much to help the environmental movement. He does that, you know, auction every year in Saint-Tropez. He raises like $40 million at those events. And that all gets given away to these wonderful environmental organizations that are on the front lines, that are fighting, you know, for all these really important issues all over the globe. And so, but if Leo flies on a plane, like he's just, he's ruined it all. And I feel like because people attack, like if somebody comes and speaks out about an issue, they get attacked so much because you're not perfect. Well, none of us are perfect. All of us have a carbon footprint. There's nothing we can do about that. I mean,
but it's going to make the next person, the next version of Leo think twice about dipping his or her toe. They don't. It's like, I don't need this.
I don't want to get all the crap that he's getting. So why would I go march?
Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't have to do anything that he doesn't want to do. He's making a conscious choice to, spend a lot of his time and resources in this realm so that he can leverage the influence that he has through the movies that he's made to make a positive difference. And if that means he has to get on a plane, because by getting on a plane, he gets to go to a certain place where he has the potential to influence influencers and raise money or whatever it is, you have to factor that into the total carbon equation that gets calculated into the cost-benefit analysis of the work that he does. He
has by far more than offset the impact that he's having when he gets on a plane. And that really frustrates me. And that's one of the things that just bugs me. And it makes me think, well, if I was some up-and-coming actor, maybe I wouldn't go march in the climate march because I'm seeing all these horrible comments to Leo. So, hats off to Leo for being, brave and being out there and having to deal with all the crap that he deals with because of it. But he is doing so much for the environmental movement, and he's, he really believes it. He's truly like an environmentalist through and through. So I have tons of respect for him, and Mark Ruffalo as well. He's amazing. He's come to a couple of my races. We did a race car in 2014 that was fighting for 100% renewable energy. So it was in conjunction with a group called the Solutions Project that works on to accelerate clean energy. And Mark Ruffalo is one of the founders of that. And he's just great. Like he went up to the DAPL march or the camp and brought solar panels up there so that they were able to have power. Like he's just so cool. He's totally, he's on the front lines, and that's the kind of stuff that I like. That's the kind of activism I like. The petitions are great and writing letters are great, but there's nothing I feel like more rewarding than like actually like being on the street and show up. Like it's great to share it on Facebook. That's awesome. But like we need you to like take to the streets. Like I'm going to go up to DC for the climate march. On April 29th, there's going to be a huge march. There's also one on Earth Day on April 22nd called the Science March. But I can't be there for that. We're actually doing a screening of Racing Extinction at Earth Day, Texas. So I couldn't go to that one, but I'm going to drive the Tesla up to the climate march. Awesome. And, I think it's going to be huge. Al Gore just said he was going to be marching. So I think it's going to be big.
That's cool. And his new movie is coming out soon, right? The follow-up to An Inconvenient Truth. Have you seen it yet? Have you heard anything about it?
I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if it'll be at Earth Day, Texas. I'll have to look. One of the new environmental films that I'm really excited to see is a film called Chasing Coral. It's by the same people that made Chasing Ice, Jeff Orlowski.
Yeah.
I've heard amazing things about it. It debuted at Sundance, and actually Luis Ojoyas, our director from Racing Extinction, was there, and he said it was just really fantastic.
That's
cool. So I'm excited to see that. That's playing at Earth Day, Texas, so I'll see it next week. But yeah, there's so many good films coming out. Leo did that, the film that aired on Nat Geo before the flood. The more the better. The more the merrier.
He also is responsible for Cowspiracy getting onto Netflix. That's another thing he didn't have to do. He put his name on that movie.
Yeah, that's a fantastic movie.
Are Leo and Mark working on another documentary, like a more like fracking oil industry oriented film?
I don't know if they are. Is that what you heard?
Maybe I heard it wrong though. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that.
Game Changers movie, right? So
yeah,
that'll be exciting.
Vegan athletes, and this is okay. So when we were at Daytona and we were giving away the vegan food, and I'm kind of little, and it was so great because I had David Carter standing next to me, and I think for guys, they see me and I'm short and little and petite, and they think, well, you're vegan, but you're this little girl. And so I was like, kind of, yeah, that's David Carter. He's like a NFL player and he's vegan. And they were like, really? I even saw, there was a couple. And when I told them, that he was vegan, the wife looked at me, looked at David, and then said to her husband, she said to me, she turns to me and she said, will my husband look like that if he goes vegan?
Yes, it's 100% guarantee.
So funny. The Game Changers movie that Louis is working on now is all about vegan athletes, and it's all these amazing people like you. I'm sure you were going to be in the film, right?
I'm not in the movie. I'm not in the movie, but I'm excited to see it.
So it's all these amazing vegan athletes. It's like really badass athletes, right? Like UFC fighters and MMA fighters and football players and these really tough guys. And it will dispel that myth, that silly myth that you can't get enough protein from a plant-based diet. I got asked that on the airplane ride here when I was flying here to LA, and I told the flight attendant that I was vegan. And the guy next to me turns to me and said, he's like, oh, you're vegan. I have a friend that's vegan, but how do you get your protein? It's like a question as a vegan that you just answer over and over. And I try so hard to not get annoyed by it, but it happens almost every day.
You got to get up for that question.
How do you answer it? What do you say?
I say that there's a lot of misconceptions about protein and what it is and how much we need. And what I have learned is that plants have protein in them. And I've been doing this for over 10 years, and I just turned 50, and I can go out and kill it with the best of them. I've never had any problem building lean muscle mass or recovering in between workouts, and I've been able to do things in my 40s that I never thought it would be possible for me as an athlete. And it turns out like you can do just fine without animal protein. And it's really not what we need to be thinking about or worried about. But it's the question that comes up. It's what everyone wants to know. And so I try really hard to make sure that I'm present for that. I think if you scoff or you get irritated, it's hard. That's not gonna be a productive conversation. I
know. I have to work on that a little bit because I've heard it so many times that it bugs me now when I hear it. I'm just like, really? Oh, this question again. But I know
you're projecting onto them as if that person had asked you 100 times.
I know.
And for them, it's brand new.
That's something I need to work on. Because that's sort of like my pet peeve when people ask me that. But yeah, I feel like we're taking off, right? We're slowly taking over the world.
It's a super exciting time. I've never seen more mainstream receptivity to these ideas, whether it is, animal rights, environmental concerns, the health implications of the food that we're eating. People are waking up, and that is due in no small part to the poor health that people find themselves in, the recognition of the environmental damage that we've perpetrated, and a greater understanding of what's going on in these factory farms that have spent decades trying to make sure that we don't understand. But when you have drones and you have social media, that stuff gets out. And I think the younger generation is much more adamant about transparency and wanting to understand the chain of custody and how their products are made, et cetera. And so I think we're at a really interesting tipping point where awareness and a willingness to advocate are coinciding and sort of congealing in a way that is really creating a recipe for some profound change. And so I'm optimistic and I'm encouraged. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to continue to raise awareness and to continue to, get people to actually change their behavior, because that's the metric. It's like you can retweet something or share something on Facebook and get a dopamine release and feel like you actually did something, but that's not actually enough. You have to look in the mirror and you have to take stock and inventory of the actions that you're taking and adjust when they're not in alignment with your values, and create that behavioral change until it's sustained and becomes just a lifestyle habit. And the more and more people that are making those changes, that's what creates this groundswell of people that will ultimately lead to a tipping point. And so for me, it's about fanning the flames of positive change. Like if I see a spark, I'm going to rush over to that spark and try to turn that spark into a little bit of a blaze, right? Yeah. And I think we need to think about how we advocate so that we're not throwing water on that spark by criticizing them for not being perfect. Like the person that criticizes Leo because he flies in a private jet, similarly, if you're, an animal rights advocate or you're a vegan activist, and somebody is telling you about how excited they are about the vegan meal they had yesterday, but they're wearing leather shoes, and you make the choice to criticize them for their shoes, I don't think that's a productive thing to do. You know what I mean? So why not celebrate the change that they are making and get them excited about making more changes or making that change more permanent in their life?
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah, never. Absolutely.
When you were talking about the wildfire, it reminded me of something that I always keep in mind when I'm getting depressed or overwhelmed about all of these problems that the world has. And it was a study that was done in 2011 by a group of scientists that wanted to figure out if there was a tipping point for ideas. Is there a point of no return where it reaches a level where it's going to spread to the rest of the society? And after doing quite a bit of research, they found that if just 10% of a population has an unwavering belief in an idea, that it's actually inevitable that the majority of the rest of the society accept that idea. And so 10% feels really doable, right? Mm-hmm. I think across the board, the three things that I have the most excitement about as far as solving all these problems or helping slow down what we're doing is solar power, which is dropping in price, drastically, and is in many cases already cheaper than coal. Electric cars, which we already talked extensively about, and plant-based diet. Those three things, I feel like we're at 10%, or we're rapidly approaching 10%, where I don't think there's any ability for anyone to stop those three from spreading across the whole world.
Yeah, I think it's accelerating. And I think the key to success, the way that you win that battle, is you take a page out of the Elon Musk playbook. When he created an electric car, he didn't create a little, crappy little Kia thing that that you would be embarrassed to drive in. He's like, if it's going to be environmentally sustainable, it can't be a sacrifice for people. So not only does it need to be fast and cool and beautiful, it has to be better than everything else available in every category. And then it becomes inevitable that you are going to desire it. And I think you need to apply that template to, these other systems. So when you look at food, the vegan food options have to taste better. They have to be price competitive, if not cheaper. They have to be convenient and more sustainable. So if you can check all of those boxes, so it meets the price point, it actually tastes better, it's healthier for you. Yep. No animals all of those things have to be in check, and you remove all the excuses and the obstacles between that product and the sort of suspicious consumer, right? Where it becomes of course I would buy this. This is just a better product, right? So you have to out innovate, because you're not going to win by expecting people to sacrifice taste and all these things. It's just not going to work. You know what I mean? So food has to be better, and that applies to clothing. There's a lot of, we still need, we have a long way to go with the clothing industry, I think. And there's quote unquote vegan clothing out there that is part of the fast fashion industry that is, creating all kinds of havoc on the environment. So it's not as simple as just animal free. It's more complicated than that, right? But to the extent that we can continue to innovate across all of these industries, and pull an Elon Musk in every category, then you win.
One of the places that I think is doing that and is going to do that is, have you had the Impossible Burger yet?
I haven't yet. I have not. Yeah, I haven't tried it yet. But I'm going. It's on the list.
So right before I raced at Daytona, I went to their headquarters in San Francisco, and Louis was with me too, and we took a tour, and I was totally blown away. I mean, the last time that I like walked through a company, I was like, "Whoa, this is gonna be huge." The last time I had that feeling was when I walked through the Tesla factory. They're doing some cool stuff over there.
Exciting.
So next time you're in San Francisco, you should definitely stop in there.
I just had Bruce Friedrich on the podcast. He's,
yeah.
Very involved in that company and Memphis Meats and some of the other, plant-based, startup food industries.
Yeah.
And we talked extensively about Impossible. I mean, they just opened this huge facility in Oakland, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to be able to scale manufacturing, because the big thing with that is the price point. So they have to reach scale in order to make it an affordable product. But everybody who's tasted the Impossible Burger says it's unbelievable. Like, it's indistinguishable from beef, right?
It's amazing. I mean, I don't know how they did what they did, but when we were walking through, their lab, there was like one room that was like sealed off, and you could see the scientist sitting in the middle of the room, and they were explaining that she was just smelling. She was just smelling mixes of different smells. And because your taste buds and what you're eating and tasting is very much tied to what you're smelling. So she was just all these computers around her, and she was just like distinguishing different smell. I mean, I was just so impressed with what they had going on there, and they hadn't opened that big, the big production side yet that they just opened. Right. So they were just making smaller amounts at that time. But yeah, now I think they're going to do well, and there's room for, there to be a lot of vegan companies that can be successful out there. But I was really impressed by what they were doing. And there's more and more every day. I feel like every time I go to the grocery store, I'm seeing new vegan options that weren't there the last time I went.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other kind of aspect to that equation of succeeding or reaching that 10% tipping point from a macro business kind of Wall Street perspective is that there is huge opportunity, huge profit opportunity in moving into this space. So do you want to be part of the old system, or do you want to be on the Elon page and innovating and be part of the opportunity that's presented by creating these new plant-based foods, whether it's in food or it's in fashion or whatever consumer product that is kind of in alignment with these more environmentally friendly practices and et cetera. So I think it's cool, and I see it moving in that direction. I wish it was moving faster. There's certainly a lot of work to be done, but I think it is a really cool time, and I just feel excited to be around for it.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be alive. And just on the note that you made about clothing, the Veg Nation shirt that I gave you is
Thank
printed.
You for that, by the way.
Yes, it's printed on sustainable cellulose.
Oh, cool!
And it's printed at a solar factory. So the factory that it's made at is completely powered by solar.
It says it on the label: Veg Nation, made in the USA with 100% solar power and fabric from sustainable cellulose, which is plant fiber.
Yes,
that's crazy. I didn't know you could make T-shirts out of cellulose.
Yeah. So this actually, the place where I'm making it is not far from here. It's in Long Beach.
Oh, cool. Is that why you came to LA?
No, I was here. Well, I wanted to do this. This is one of the reasons I came here, but I was also filming a PSA, which I see you have his name on your wall here with Adrian.
Oh, Adrian Grenier. Yeah, I've been emailing back and forth about trying to get him on the podcast.
Oh, great.
So I wish I'd known that. I would have told you to wrangle him a little bit, because we came close, and then we can't, because he's always in, he's traveling a lot, and I don't want to bug him either, but I think he wants to do it. So maybe I'm going to enlist you to help me.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. He's really great, and he's got
the straw thing.
He's got a that's what we were doing.
Like no sucking anymore. Like get rid of your straws.
Stop sucking. # stop sucking. So yesterday was they did a PSA, and there were a whole bunch of people and I don't know when this is going to come out. So they were like, don't share anything on social media. So I'm not sure if I think it'll be out by the time this airs, but they were like, we're not supposed to talk about it yet. But we were, Yeah, I mean, there was like all these different actors, and Van Jones was there, and Philippe Cousteau. And I mean, there were people in and out all day, and I was only there later towards the end of the day. But yeah, it was all about like trying to get people to not use plastic straws anymore. And I don't have, it's in my purse, but I've got a metal straw that I've been carrying around in my purse. That I got from the Plastic Pollution Coalition like years ago. They go to like concerts and big events, and they just give away these metal straws. And now like once you become aware of it, then it's like another thing. Like when I go to the grocery store and I see people still using plastic bags, I'm like, really? Seriously? Like still plastic? Now that's happening with me with the straws. Now I'm sitting in the bar and I'm like looking around and I'm just seeing all those little plastic, black stir straws, and sometimes
straws are the
two
new
of
plastic
them.
bag.
They are. It really is. So now I'm like really sensitive to it. I'm seeing it everywhere, and now every restaurant that I go into, I'm like, have you guys thought about?
Right. So we need
switching?
metal straw companies. There's your market opportunity.
Yeah, right? Metal, glass, and then I even heard somebody saying that there's like bamboo ones that are made that are really, the bamboo grows so fast, and
straws.
I don't know how we're going to solve it, but I mean, Adrian is, heading up this campaign,
right.
and I know that they're going to, like, their goal is to go and like get businesses and really big, like, sports teams and things like that to like make the switch. And so you're kind of, if you get the big organizations and the companies to do it, and the restaurants and the resorts, then it's not really in the hands of the consumer to make a good or bad choice. The good choice has been made for them. And I think that's probably the best way to do this, because it's just habit. I find that even when I order a drink and I say no plastic straw, sometimes the bartender, just out of habit, like puts it in and then says, I'm sorry. I know you said no straw. And it's just habit, because I do that with every drink. And so I think it's going to be hard to get them. They're not going to stop using straws. It's just they have to be swapped out for something that's not ending up in the ocean and killing all the animals that we're killing. We're just an awful species, aren't we? I'm a big believer in, like, we have 7.4 billion people on the planet. Like, this is one of the things that I find to be frustrating, that I feel like a lot of the environmental community doesn't talk about. It's like the big white elephant standing in the room that nobody mentions. But if you read on what the ecologists have found and what they say, that like humans, if we were all living in like relative prosper, that the amount that the earth can handle is like 2 billion. We're adding like 300,000 people to the planet every day, practically. And so, like, imagine a city. And so as much as like going, like, I'm, vegan, solar, electric car, if we keep adding 300,000 people more every day to the planet, like net growth, I mean, this is just, it's simple math. This is not sustainable. We cannot keep going on this route. And so I've started talking about that a little bit. And, there's like 134 million orphans in the world that are looking for homes. So if you, have that real, drive to be a parent, there is that option of, helping a child that's already here on earth that doesn't have a family. And when I talked about this, I was at an environmental event, and I kind of threw out my normal talk, and I just talked about population. And it was so sweet. After I left, I was waiting for the elevator, and this girl, like maybe in her early 20s, came running up to me and just gave me the hugest hug. She almost was crying, and said, "Thank you so much for talking about the orphans, because if my mom had had her own kids, she never would have found me." And I was just like, this is an important issue we need to start talking about. So that's like I feel like that's the next big thing, that it's an uncomfortable subject. I know people get really uncomfortable with it, but for environmental reasons, we don't need to keep increasing. Like, we at least need to start talking about like choosing just to have one or two, so that you're just like replacing yourselves and you're not bringing like the numbers up. Then, two is at least, then you're not growing population. But it's like people are having, what's that family that's on Discovery Channel that's had like 19 kids, and then they've got like 50 grandkids already. And I'm just like, and you're like glorifying these people and putting them on a TV show, like.
Well, it's a human curiosity. I mean, I have 4 kids, so.
Okay, sorry.
Well, 2 stepsons and 2 daughters.
Oh, okay, okay.
And our nephew lives with us too, so we took him in. But yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I can't disagree with that. I haven't practiced that in my life, but
yeah, and that's okay. I mean, we need people to still have kids, right? Like, it wouldn't be great if everybody made, like, me and my husband consciously made the choice to be child free, and that was partly because I had a professor at UCSD, a biochemistry professor actually, that one day we came into class and he's like, "We're not talking about biochemistry today. I'm showing you a film about population." And I was just blown away. And I remember walking all across the campus to talk to him about population. So we certainly need people, especially wonderful people like you that are doing great things for the planet, to keep breeding. But we also need to make it okay and normalize it a little bit for people that make the choice to be child-free, and to not feel like judged, and not feel like there's like, just... When are you
gonna stop with this race car stuff and start having babies, right?
Yeah, oh my God, when I got married, one of the people at the wedding, like, more distant relative on my husband's side, was like congratulating us and said, "So now you're gonna stop with the racing, right? Now that you're married." Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. Did you like just quit your whole life because you got married? Yes, no, that's not going to happen. But anyways, that's a new subject that I feel like, and I found that when I talk about it and I say, I made the choice to be child free because I feel like, with all my activism and everything, it'd be very hard for me to be able to manage like racing and activism and also like having a child. As you know, I have 3 nieces, 2 sisters. One sister has 2 kids and one has 1. And it's so much work, and there's no way that I would have the energy to be able to do all my activism and, try and manage all of these things. Right,
but you shouldn't have to justify that decision.
But for some reason, like, our society feels like you're doing something wrong I feel like there is that, and you'll find all kinds of communities on Facebook that are, like, we made the choice to be child free, and like they're finding each other because they're trying to find other people that accept that you made that decision and aren't like, "Oh, well, you just did that because you're selfish and you're all about your career," or, "What's wrong with you? You don't like kids?" And it's like, no, I love kids. I totally love kids. I love my nieces so much. I love being an auntie. I love coming into town and getting to like spoil them and take them on shopping trips. And I love being around kids. It's just, that's enough for me. And I just want people to start talking about that, because I feel like as soon as we start talking about it, it normalizes it a little bit. And then other people that have been thinking about it are like, "Oh, I've always thought about it, but I never bring it up because it's kind of awkward and it feels kind of like a subject you shouldn't bring up." And it's like, okay, we're at 7.4 billion. We're on track to be at over 10 billion people by 2050. Can we start talking about population now? Like, when is it okay for us to start talking about it? And I think the answer is now.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Okay.
But I can't let you go without sort of leaving the listener with some ideas about how to get more involved, right? So if someone's listening to this and they're like, "I'm inspired, like I'm like, I want to do something." So obviously you can modify your own behavior. You can be more mindful and conscious about the choices that you're making around food and the consumer products that you're choosing, and the greenhouse gas emissions that you're contributing to the planet, and make adjustments that way, and understand that in this culture where we feel disempowered or like our vote doesn't count, that there are really some very powerful, tangible, simple changes that you can make that can make a difference, that make a real difference. But beyond that, if somebody wants to get more involved in the kind of activism side of this equation, do you have places that you recommend people can visit? I mean, obviously your website and all that kind of stuff to learn more about you, but are there certain nonprofits that you think are better than others, or how can people, dip their toe in and start to, flex their muscles in the world in which you live?
So there's so many great nonprofits out there. and so many organizations doing great things. But some of the ones that I'm personally, dedicate my time to working with is Oceanic Preservation Society, which is the group that made the Cove and Racing Extinction. Obviously, Rick O'Berry's Dolphin Project, who Rick is the star of the Cove. And really, I feel like, the godfather of the anti-captivity movement for cetaceans. And then the Solutions Project is the group that I've been working with on clean energy issues. So that's all about, letting people know that it's possible for us to get 100% renewable energy. And one of the guys that, and this is the organization that we talked about earlier about Mark Ruffalo, one of the founders is a guy named Mark Jacobson, and he is a professor at Stanford, and he specializes in energy. And he's created this amazing plan for every single one of the 50 states, how each of those states can be run off of 100% renewable energy.
Oh, wow,
so there's no
cool.
Excuse where, the government or the governor is like, but how would we do it? And he's got an actual plan for every single state on how they can get there. And he's just really brilliant. And so I like, the thing I like about Solutions Project, it's like all these people with different, there's a business guy on it, and there's, the scientist, Mark Jacobson, and then you've got Ruffalo, who's reaching, a broad group of people through his, being a famous actor. And they've got this interesting mix of people from all these different kinds of worlds. So when I ran the clean energy cars, it was with them. But there's obviously tons of amazing groups out there. I've also been, my partner with the vegan powered car was a group called A Well-Fed World. And I really like their philosophy is to combat two issues of suffering that shouldn't exist in the world today. One being human hunger and the other being animal suffering. And so they go into areas that are struggling with hunger, and they bring in vegan food. And so it's reducing suffering not only for humans but also for the animals. And then World Animal News, which is Katie Cleary's group. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called World Animal News, and it's just it's like basically like a CNN but just about animals. So any animal news story will go up there. And they were also a partner with the vegan powered car. So I was actually really close to having to cancel the vegan tent because I had raised enough money from A Well-Fed World, had sponsored the race car. So the race car was taken care of. But then I went crowdfunding to find the funds to have the tent and give away the food and bring in the chef. And
has anybody else ever crowdfunded a NASCAR?
I don't know if anybody else has. That was the third one that I've done. The first one was the Cove in 2012, then Blackfish in 2014, and then this vegan powered car. And I don't know if anybody else has done that. That's a really good question. Cool. I don't know if on that really high, on the higher levels where it's really that expensive. I'm sure people have done it in the lower levels of the sport where it's a little bit cheaper. But thankfully, we had such good coverage and so much positive feedback on the vegan powered car and the tent and the food giveaway at Daytona that both A Well-Fed World and World Animal News are coming back again to do Talladega on May 5th. So that's the one that I would love for you to come. I mean, you've never been to a NASCAR race,
Landon's invited me a couple times, and I've never been able to make it work.
Well, he'll be racing that weekend too. So I'll race on Friday, and Landon will be racing on Sunday. And in the meantime, you're also going to have free vegan food to eat at my tent all weekend. It's going to be hard for you to say no to this one, I think.
I'll look at the calendar. I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
And I'll put links in the show notes to all of those organizations that you just spoke about. And that's it. Thank you so much for doing this. That was really fantastic. I really appreciate it. You are a bold, strong, fearless, powerful female leader. We need more people like you. And so I really appreciate the work that you do and the love that you put into the advocacy, and how you merge sport with advocacy, I think is a really cool model that I would like to see more athletes emulate. And it's just amazing what you've been able to accomplish. So I'm excited for you for Talladega, but more importantly, I'm excited to see kind of what you do over the next couple of years. It's been really cool spending time with you.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here.
Great. So if you're digging on Leilani, the best place to get in touch with her is your website, leilanimunter.com, and you're pretty easy to find on Twitter and Instagram. So just your name everywhere pretty much, right?
Yeah, actually, so the website to send them to would be leilani.green.
Oh, okay. That's
there's
right.
a new extension that's .green. So instead of .com, it's kind of like, well, I feel like it's sort of for environmental organizations more, but so I bought Leilani.green because I felt like I had to move away from Carbon Free Girl because I'm 43 years old now. I turned 43 on race day at Daytona, and I was like, I feel like I've sort of outgrown the girl thing. Like, I can't really call myself Carbon Free Girl anymore. You can
call yourself whatever you want.
I know. I just feel like, at 43, I'm getting a little old to call myself girl. So that's when I was like, I have to do something new. So I did Leilani.green.
I love it. Yeah. Great. And Leilani Munter on Twitter, Instagram, all those other places, right? Yep.
I just do Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I know everybody's doing the Snapchat thing, but I think 3 social networks is my maximum, and right. I can't learn another one.
Fair enough. Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Peace. Lance. All right, we did it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. One quick note, I forgot to mention at the outset of this show that we recorded this conversation quite a while back. I believe it was April 14th that we recorded it a couple months ago, which isn't a huge deal because these conversations are meant to be evergreen. And this is just because I've banked a whole bunch of episodes. It's taking me a little bit longer to kind of work through my catalog. In any event, the race that we discussed during the conversation, that has already transpired. It went fine. It went great. It was good for her cause. It was good for the planet. And I'm looking forward to letting you guys know when she's going to race again. In any event, give her a shout on the social channels. Let her know what you thought of the conversation. Be sure to check out her website. It's leilani.green, Leilani.green. She's going to be, or she's in the midst of launching this new apparel line as we speak, t-shirts, etc. So keep an eye out for that. And like I said, I'll keep you posted on her next race. Deal? Deal. If you guys want to keep up with my training in preparation for the upcoming Otillo, I keep saying Otillo, Ödele, I think it's Ödele in the Swedish accent, swim run world championships. I'm posting daily on Instagram, specifically Instagram stories, and uploading all my workouts to Strava. So if you're intrigued by kind of what I'm doing on a daily basis, check out those accounts. Have you guys checked out our meal planner yet? We got thousands of plant-based recipes just waiting for you to access. Unlimited meal plans, grocery lists, everything's totally personalized and customized based on your goals and your food preferences and your allergies and your time constraints. We got 24/7 customer support from a team of experts. We have grocery delivery in 22 metropolitan areas via Instacart. And I can't say enough good things about this. I mean, I'm so proud of this product that we have put out to the world. It's super affordable, just $1.90 a week. And here's the thing. Most people that embark on a plant-based lifestyle, they have the best of intentions. Perhaps they think this is going to be the new thing forever. But I think it's something like 8 out of 10 people that try to do this end up lapsing. And the reason for that is that we're busy and we lose focus, or we don't have the tools at our fingertips to stay on track. And that's really the inspiration, the motivation, and the intention behind this meal planner product that we have launched. It's really robust. It basically provides you with everything that you need to embrace a more plant-centric lifestyle and nutrition program for yourself, for your kids, for your family. I can't say enough good things about it. So if you haven't checked it out, go to meals.richroll.com or click on meal planner on my website on richroll.com. Easy to find, explore it, and have a look. Plant Power Ireland is coming up very soon. We do have a couple spots left. It's going to be July 24 through 31 at Ballyvolane, which is this beautiful manor on 90 acres in the Irish countryside in County Cork. We're going to be visited by the Happy Pear Lads. Remember those guys from the podcast? They're going to come down for a day. It's basically a 7-day experience intended to transform your life with Julie and I. We're going to cook, we're going to eat, we're going to run, we're going to meditate, we're going to do tea ceremony, we're going to have these really intensive workshops, we're going to have Ayurvedic treatments. It's going to be fun too, intense and fun. And basically, the idea behind this experience is to leave you a different person from the person that enters this experience. That in essence, at the end of this 7-day experience, you will be fortified with the tools and the resources and the inspiration and the education that you need to truly and very substantially transform your life over the long haul. If you want more information on this, if this sounds like something that you would be into, again, we only have a few spots left, but they're up and available with a bunch more information at ourplantpowerworld.com. So check that out. If you want to receive a free short weekly email from me, I send one out every Thursday. It's called Roll Call. Basically 5 or 6 articles I came across, a documentary I watched, a video I watched, a podcast I listened to, a new product that I'm enjoying. Just cool stuff. No affiliate links. I'm not trying to make any money off this. It's not a spammy thing whatsoever. People seem to be enjoying it. So if that sounds cool to you and you haven't subscribed yet, do that. Just enter your email address on my website in any of those windows that you see popping up, or go to richroll.com/subscribe. Also on my site, we have signed copies of Finding Ultra, of Plant Power Way, of This Cheese is Nuts. We got cool Plant Power t-shirts. We got tech tees. We got all kinds of cool swag and merch. I want to thank everybody who helped put on the show today. Jason Camiolo for audio engineering and production. You heard him on the last episode 300. He's doing a good job. Thank you so much, Jason, for all your hard work. Sean Patterson, he is the artistic wizard behind all the graphics that we create, all the graphic assets that I share on social media throughout the week related to the episode. That's Sean Patterson. He's doing a great job. Thank you, Sean. And theme music, as always, by Anna Lemma. And for those of you that are new, Anna Lemma is my son's and my nephew's band. They're the guys that wrote the theme music for this show. It's been the theme music since day 1 or maybe episode 2 of the podcast. It was always intended to be temp music. Until we got to like doing something more professional, but it just stuck, and that's the theme, and I love it. I hope you guys enjoy it too. In any event, thank you for the love, you guys. Again, so grateful to have your attention. And to have you along for the ride on this amazing journey. It's been over 300 episodes. I just can't even believe it. This experience has enriched my life in innumerable ways, and I'm so honored that it is resonating with you guys out there. So really appreciate it. See you guys soon. Peace. Plants.